didn't see you there. We've got a lot to do today, so you better buckle in.
Yeah, I don't think divorce has been legalized yet.
Then I will shoot you.
Okay, let's go.
All right, everybody. So we're going to start here on page 28 in your packets with ending the war. We've got some notes for these 3 boxes. Pause this video at any time if you need more time with a particular slide. So first here, looking at ending the war, which, as you can see above, was the deadliest in U.S. history, primarily because both sides were American. So Confederate generals surrendered on June 2nd, 1865. There was no treaty to end the war, just a surrender, which indicated that the Confederacy would remain part of the Union. And for much of the war, Lincoln was denying that the Confederacy existed as a separate nation anyway. So they sort of gave up on this rebellion, as Lincoln called it. But without a formal treaty, that means there were many problems that remained. And that's the focus of our lesson today. You'll be looking at all sorts of different problems that persisted after the war before we start to look at this period of Reconstruction that followed it, where people in the United States, particularly in the government, tried to put the Union back together. Next, we're going to look at the problems solved and the problems that remained. Really, these 2 boxes you're going to brainstorm on your own to fill out, but I do have some suggestions for you if you need. So some of the problems solved, again, you're going to list as many as you can, but what you can consider is that the Union was restored, that rebellion had ended, the fighting ceased, and most people involved in the war effort were able to return home. Many enslaved persons, however, who participated in the war for the North or the South, didn't enjoy that luxury. Many of them were brought back to the plantations where they, were owned before the war started. Some of the problems that remain, again, list as many as you can. We're going to talk about so many today. But just as some ideas, slavery was not legally abolished yet, and that's going to require a passage of a constitutional amendment, which next week you'll be looking at, or for second period tomorrow, you're going to be looking at the debates that happened on the Senate floor to get that 13th Amendment that did abolish slavery passed. The war debt and damages, we needed to figure out how we were going to pay to reconstruct, in a literal sense, reconstruct the nation that had been damaged by the war. And pay off the debts that were accrued. And that ideological divide between North and South was still there. The paintings you looked at last class show just how different lifestyles were for people in the North and the South, which would make it difficult to bring this Union back together after the fighting had ended. As soon as you finish your notes on page 28, in your groups, each group mate will take 2 different rows, just because there's 6 different options here. If we were in class, each group would be presenting one. But here, just choose 2 to read and fill out your row for, and then you can share. That will mean that a couple categories will be completed by more than one group member, but that's okay. To fill out this chart, you're going to use the attachment called Effects of the War. It's going to look like this. There's a title at the top of each section, so you'll know which ones to read. Finally, we're back to America, the story of us, the legacy of the Civil War. You're going to answer these questions as you watch the video. You guys are in for a real treat. This time, none other than Rudy Giuliani is a contributor to this episode. So buckle in and enjoy. Feel free, gather around the television, bring all your parents in to watch with you, and send pictures of these pages once you're done. In the spirit of distance learning, the question for your parents today is about the first time they remember using technology in school or for work. The first time I remember, it was not that old. It was in grade school, like toward the end, like 4th or 5th grade. And we had this new computer class, and we went in to like do some math problems on the computer, but we had these headphones that like felt like they were gonna smush your brain out of your nose. Like it was torture. And I hated computer class. I didn't ever want to go when it was time every Thursday. because I was really concerned for my personal safety. But after that, we had like 2 computer labs in my high school, and probably once a month you would have a class that took you down to the computer lab and you would get to use, I mean, they still at that time had the glass screens and all. And usually kids would have one computer at home. Like we still had desktops at the time, so if you needed to type up an essay, I would like read the essay I had written out to my dad. He would type it on the computer and then print it out, and I would bring it to school. So it's interesting. Ask your parents if they remember the first time they had to use computers for school or for work. It may be much earlier for some than others, but could be interesting.